Oh, hello. Nice,
Um,
nice to meet you.
and you, I apologize. First of all, I'm sitting outside I've got an event later this afternoon, and I'm sitting outside, and there's a freaking water fountain over there,
Oh,
and it's windy. So I don't know what this sounds like. But
oh,
I
don't
mean,
worry.
if you do some post processing and stuff like that, then if we just sit for a second and you can get the sound floor of the fountain, and you can remove it later if
No,
you want.
that's fine. I don't even stress about it too much. I've also got people walking behind me and like, you know what? This is life. It
Yeah. Okay.
happens. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
thank
tried
you.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tried to find somewhere here like an office anyway. It's a long story, but suffice to say, at least it's sunny and there's a small bit of blue sky in the UK, which is unusual. So
Yeah, I wanted to say, are you really in the UK? I see blue sky.
I know, right?
I
There we
lived in
go.
London for a few years and I remember one winter walking somewhere and I suddenly felt this euphoria flooding my body and I couldn't work out what was going on. And then I realized there was a small beam of sunlight had broken through the clouds and it was like on my arm or something. And I was like, oh, sun, sun.
Like, oh my God, I remember that. Well, I grew up in Memphis, actually, in the US, and so, which is in the South, so it's quite, it's quite warm there, and then my family's lived in Texas, pretty much for the last. Well, my mom and dad lived in Texas for, I guess, the past 35 years.
What?
Um, so yeah, and I lived in Austin before I moved to the UK back in '99, and so yeah, I was used to sort of hot weather and that sort of thing, and came here and was just like, yeah, okay,
So
take it.
do you consider yourself, so are your parents British?
No,
Your parents are
no, no,
American. You
yeah,
are American,
yeah,
but you're living in the UK now. How long have you been living in the UK for?
25 years,
Oh, wow.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's how far.
So I got, and I don't know, we can talk about this again later if you think it's interesting, but yeah, I moved here in 1999. I got transferred with work, and I was working for a startup company based in Austin, and they did credit card processing software, and I did all their software implementation and training. So I was on the road like 300 days out of every year,
Oh man.
and when I traveled around, I think I was employee number 32 or something with the company. So I joined them right when they were beginning to scale,
Hmm.
and they had tons and tons of, business people all over the US. I was constantly, on the road. I've been to like the top 200 cities in the US and
Wow.
stuff, and, was constantly on the road. Then they opened an office in the UK, and I started doing a much more long haul travel. So, I don't know, I might be in San Jose for a couple of days, like Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday I'd fly to Istanbul. And then
Wow.
I do, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday I'd fly back to Minneapolis. And then I
Oh
do,
my
you
God.
know, Monday, Tuesday, Minneapolis. Then I'd be in Cleveland, and then I'd be in New York, and then I'd be in Miami, and then I'd be back to Paris, and then I'd be back. Like, it was madness. It was great fun, but it was madness. And so eventually I just said, yeah, why don't I go to London and be based in the London office? Because as an American, having international work experience on your CV is really good. And it puts
Yeah.
you in a whole different bracket of
Yeah,
pay bracket and bracket of jobs that you can get.
exactly.
And what I really wanted is I wanted a cushy, um, I wanted like a cushy internet, like director of international or something for a startup company where I could just basically fly around the world on an expense account and make sure that they used A4 size paper and stuff like that. And I nearly got there, but yeah, I I was here for about a year and a half, and then they decided the company sold to eFunds, and after they sold to eFunds didn't want to keep the UK office open. So then I had a choice. I had to either go back to the US, and I could have worked for eFunds and gone back to America and continued doing what I was doing, or I could stay here and try and find something else. And I'd met some girl on a night bus and thought, at the time I thought, well, she seems all right. Maybe I'll hang around and see what happens. And I kind of wasn't ready to leave yet either. I wanted to have another, I really wanted to be here kind of 3 or 4 years before I went home. So I thought, I hadn't been here long enough. And yeah, so I decided to stay. And I just had my 20th wedding anniversary with that girl that I met on the bus. So I guess that was a good decision. But
oh my gosh,
the jury's still out. We'll see.
Yeah, it's funny. I was living in Australia, and I also met a guy in South Africa, and that was my motivation for going back to South Africa. Also, I was sort of between jobs, and I had to decide if I'm going to stay and marry a local for the visa or leave. And so it was like that catalyst. Okay, I didn't end up marrying that guy, thank the Lord. But yeah, it's funny. It's those sliding doors. But David Brown, everybody, I think we should keep that in the cut. I think that's
fine.
A great intro.
We'll just keep chatting, and then you can use what you want and what you don't. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to say your accent's quite schizophrenic now, because it is definitely British, and then it's got the R's and the twang coming in from the US. So
the other thing that it has, though, is I had an Aussie roommate for a couple of years. And so there's a little bit of an Aussie twang in there as well. And my wife studied linguistics at university.
Oh, wow.
And she stayed with me quite a lot when I had the Aussie roommate and a couple of other guys. There was a Kiwi there as well and another American. And I mean, it was great fun. But anyway, she was fascinated with all of our accents and stuff. And she's worked out that she thinks that an Australian accent is essentially like RP English accent mixed with American. And if you kind of blend those two together, you end up with the Aussie kind of accent. So she's like, it's really easy for you to pick that up because it's not too far from your American kind of rednecky American side, and then also the English side that I was picking up. So yeah, my accent is all over the place.
But I also have a theory that people who pick up accents quickly are musical. I just want to get this.
Interesting.
Because I feel like you have to be musical to hear the music of a language. Every language I feel is based in music, kind of.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Every language has its own music and its own sound. Yeah. And if you are musical, you tend to pick that up quite quickly. So I don't know, are you musical? Have you ever explored your musical side?
I was never encouraged. I was from a very traditional, conservative Southern family. And we didn't do art. We didn't do music. We did sport, like
right.
and hunting and that sort of thing. And yeah, when I was younger, we had a piano in the house, but no one knew how to play it.
Oh, no.
And it was more for decoration, I think, than anything else.
Mantelpiece for all the photos. But exactly. I thought all Americans could play that amazing hammer-on pull-off, like guitar, that blues guitar. Man, that is amazing how...
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah, and my wife plays guitar, so she actually played guitar when she was younger. She used to she played everything, heavy metal, all sorts of stuff. Mm-hmm. And after we'd been together for a couple of years, her guitar was at her parents' house. She never really had it with her. And so we brought the guitar down and stuff like that. And then she started to play and I learned. So I do play guitar very badly. But I can at least, strum out the chords every once in a while. I can't sing and play at the same time yet, but I can at least play a little bit.
Yeah, I also play guitar badly.
Yeah. It's fun. I mean, I like it. And it does exercise a completely different part of my brain.
Yeah.
And I like that. But going back to the language and the accent thing, I have a slightly different theory on it. And I've been thinking about this for a long time as well. So I'm interested to see what you think of my theory. My theory is that if you think it's temporary, then you will keep your original accent. So if you move somewhere and you go, I'm only going to be here for 2 years and then I'm going home, you keep your original accent because you know that you're going home, so you don't pick up the new language or the new accent. Whereas if you feel that it's permanent and that you're going to stay, then you start to pick it up because you think you need to, you'll want to fit in with everybody else. And so you start to pick up the accent. And I have no idea what the psychology is behind it. I like your music theory.
Yes. Look, I have
as
met
well.
people who are sort of impervious to the accent. Like they've
Yeah,
lived 40 years in Tennessee and they
yeah,
still sound South
yeah,
African as the day they were born. It just doesn't go in. I don't think they can hear it. So it might be a bit of both.
yeah,
You need to be able to hear the accent to adopt it. Because when I lived in Australia, I definitely put on the accent to fit in with the locals. And then after a while, you don't realize that you put it on.
yeah.
Also, the South African accent is, it's kind of a mixture between, it's very Kiwi. And so it's sort of like
Mm,
British Kiwi. Yeah. But
kind of.
anyway,
Yeah.
let's jump
Anyway,
into the meat and bones of why I have you here, David. Thank you
yeah,
so
let's
much for your
go.
time and welcome to the show.
Oh, you're
So
welcome.
maybe if you don't mind, just give me your elevator pitch and I'm going to judge your elevator pitch on how great it is. So if I met you in the elevator and we only had like 10, 15 seconds between here and the next floor and you're getting out and I say,
Yeah.
what do you do? Let's hear your elevator pitch.
Um, yeah, I run a podcast network called With AI FM, and we have a series of podcasts focused on individual verticals, hosting discussions about the impact that AI is going to have on business and people who are working.
I can tell you've thought this through before, and obviously this isn't your first rodeo. So how long did it take you to get to that very succinct elevator pitch? Because that was
I
full
literally
mark.
made it up on the fly.
Oh, because even though I love working on my clients' elevator pitches, I'm actually pretty bad at my own elevator pitch. Oh,
Yeah, I've worked for startups for 35 years. And
oh yeah.
so it just now at this point, I've done so many pitches for so many companies and I've had to, do that thing so many times that it's now just become kind of second nature. Well, at least I hope it has become second nature.
Yeah.
For my media company, maybe it's a little bit different because the media company is a little bit broader scope. But
Yeah.
the thing that I'm focused on the most at the minute is kind of the AI network. But my media company, we do, it's very similar. I help companies and people with their media needs, audio and video. Could be podcasting, could be training videos or videos for YouTube or explainer videos, things like that. So you see, that one's not quite so polished.
Because I think there's probably an element of you're still kind of working it out. Like, to a large extent, even though my agency's been going 13 years and we now know we specialize in B2B marketing specifically, we help brands grow using a mix of thought leadership, brand building, and lead generation. There's my elevator pitch.
Okay.
There's also like as the offering gets refined and refined and refined over years, I think it becomes more and more niched and focused and clear what you do.
Yeah,
So,
I think so. And I think also you tend to pivot as well along the way. So what most companies, whatever they start off doing is not what they end up doing. And at some point they have to, you have to figure out how you explain it differently, or maybe you're going after a different line of business or, whatever that might be. And, it's almost every company I've worked with so far has had to do that at some point. But yeah, I love working for startups and with startups and sort of helping people get over the 0 to 1. I'm not the 1 to 100 guy. I'm the 0 to 1 guy.
yes. So you help them get started.
I like the chaos.
All right. You like bringing order out of chaos.
I don't know that I bring order.
You bring different chaos, better, healthy chaos.
Well, I think they're two different people, right? Like the person that gets a company from 0 to 1 is like, you got 0 to 0.5, which is the founder. And then you've got that 0.5 to 1. And that's that core first team of like 10 people. And the thing about that is you never know what you're going to have to do day to day. You can have a role. You can be called sales, or you can be called marketing, or you can be called whatever. But at the end of the day, you have to do whatever needs to be done. So if you need to do QA, you do QA. If you need to go put a sensor on a pole by a traffic light, you go out and you help the guys put the sensor on the pole.
Yeah.
You can't get personally disrupted by that.
Yeah.
And some
All hands
people
on deck.
exactly. And some people have a personality that's a good fit for that, and some don't. You know, and it's not a value judgment or a criticism at all. It's just people are different. My wife, she likes a very stable, set thing. She likes to go into work. She likes to know what she's doing. She works in finance. So, you know, she likes to know what she's doing. She likes to do bank reconciliation, and that's what she enjoys doing. If I said,
and that's why you're a good partnership, because of the opposites. And I find that as well with my husband, even though he sometimes drives me crazy. He's the risk seer and I'm the risk taker. Okay. And so like, I'm just like, let's do this. And he's like, no, for the following very obvious reasons. And I'm like,
exactly.
Oh, right. But
I'm like, do it anyway.
Yeah, that's a good partnership. Good balance.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So, so that's kind of what I do. So, you know, the last few companies that I've worked for, I kind of rucked up and just said, you know, somebody would introduce me, and I would just say, look, what do you need? You know, what do you need? And they'd say, I just
fix.
Yeah, and they'd say, well, I just need somebody to prank. You know, I don't know if I can swear, but I just need somebody to do some shit. Yeah. And I'm like, well, that's great. I can do some shit. Let's do some shit together. And then they're like, okay, let's go. And you know, we'd start off on a contract, and I'd work a couple of days a week, and just literally like, what do you need me to do today? And some days it's marketing, some days it's sales, some days it's building a CRM, some days it's climbing up a light pole. Like you know, you never know. And then, you know, sort of get that up and running, build a team, help with recruiting, all that sort of stuff, but help them kind of understand that, finding their feet, finding their message, the elevator pitch, all that sort of stuff.
So when did AI enter the conversation? Because obviously ChatGPT, when was it? November last year.
22.
Yeah. So you were the early adopter. I mean, everyone's been talking about AI, but AI really became AI, I think, with the GPTs. But so I mean, I don't want to ask the boring question of how is AI changing everybody's lives, but I think there's AI and there's AI. Everyone's using AI these days. How are you finding AI? Which platforms or which tools, or how are you recommending AI to your startups? Like, just give us some, like, these are the top things. Like, if this is your problem, this solves the problem. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. So I think, I agree with you. I think nobody really talked about AI until really probably February last year. So February of 23. Yeah. ChatGPT was released to the public in November of 22. Yeah. It did sort of trudge along in the background quite quietly, even though there was a lot of in the tech press. So a lot of the really, really deep tech people knew about it. Yeah. But not really too many people outside of that. It wasn't until early, I think over the holidays, when people had time off, they had a chance to look around, and then they started to read some articles about it, and it started to pick up. At the time, I was working in a co-working space that was specifically created for creatives, and like sort of, you know, part funded by the local council. So it was a little bit less expensive and easier for us to afford because we were all like freelancers. Yeah. And one of the things that I noticed in around that February, March time was that people in the office were already starting to lose work. And we had freelancers who were doing things like, you know, copywriters and those sorts of things who were losing work already. Yeah. And that was because of ChatGPT and the nature of what ChatGPT is, a textual, or was at the time, it was a pure textual tool. And I think that's where it really started, was early last year. And what happened is that a lot of companies, particularly small companies and medium-sized companies who weren't really confident at their ability to write copy, found that they could use a GPT or ChatGPT, because it was basically the only one at the time. They could use ChatGPT to write articles, copy, ads, business plans, all sorts of stuff. Like, it could help them do all this work that they weren't very confident at doing. And that was for £20 a month. So it was a very easy task for them to say, well, I don't want to pay a copywriter £500 or £600 a month to write stuff for me when now I can do it. It's not as good as the copywriter, but it's better than what I can do. And I think that was the key, is the AI still isn't as good. There's not a single AI tool that's as good as a professional at any task.
No, exactly.
But it's significantly better than the average person at any task.
Yeah.
And that's the key. So if you're an average, like you might be an expert in physics, but you know nothing about ads or advertising, and you might want to set up a consultancy where you help companies with, solving their difficult technical physics problems, but you have no idea how to do an ad. So instead of now hiring someone to do the ad for you, you can go to a GPT tool and you can say, help me write an ad, give it the information, and it can help you write something that's way better than what you could do. Still not as good as an experienced marketing person, but it's better than what you can do. And for the price, that's good enough.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you can create your own training curriculum from, you can literally train yourself to like almost, okay, maybe not university degree level, but, using it. It's like, but I agree with you. It's like when we, because I use it for all my SEO copy, when I'm doing SEO copy for my own website, I get the GPT to do the heavy lifting, but it's bland, or it's just not right. But it does the bulk of the stuff, and then I have to go and really just finesse, fine tune. It's the slave, it's not the master.
That's right.
For now.
Yeah, exactly. For now. That's going to be the theme of the rest of this conversation for now. But that being said, getting to answer directly your question that you asked a minute ago, now there are very specialist tools that are good at different things. And so you need to know which tool to use for each task.
Yes.
And so, for example, if you want to write something that's a little bit more emotional and a little bit more, you need better language for it and that sort of thing, then I would ask Claude. If you want things that are a bit more business and a bit more academic, you might want an outline, or you might say you want an outline for your marketing board report, for example. I would go to ChatGPT for that.
Yeah.
And ask it for the outline and a description of all of the information that you need to put in. You don't want it to fill it in for you, but what you want it to do is give you the template of everything that you need so that you don't forget anything. Yeah. And give you a description of why that's important and blah, blah, blah. Genius at doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If you're writing a research paper and you need accurate references, and you really need to know that it's not hallucinating information, and you need to be able to call to somewhere, then you need to use Google.
Yeah.
Because it will give you links back to the original information where it's pulling it from. So, and obviously if you want images, there's a few different things, but you might go to Midjourney. If you want video, you can go to HeyGen or a few different others. So there's specialist tools now that you need to know where to go.
Exactly.
And I think,
I
was just going to say, I think that's the key now is, it used to be a very blunt instrument, like everybody just went to ChatGPT because it was the only one. Now there's tons of different options and they all do things differently. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever tried, have you used Pi? There's one called, it's Pi, Pi.ai. And Pi is really, I've actually interviewed Pi for my podcast.
Oh, wow.
And but Pi was trained exclusively on video and audio content. So it was trained on conversational content about how people really talk, not how people write, which is very different. So when you talk to it, it's near as talking to a human.
Oh, wow.
It's really, really cool. And then you've got other tools like, there's thousands. Literally thousands.
Like we've literally if I can just quickly interject, that's what we've done. We've done an audit on our business to say, what are our business needs? And then we have identified the right AI tool pre-built off the shelf that solves that need, and then you look at all the different options and the pricing and like what's included, and you pick the one that best gives you what you're looking for. And that's it. Because I got an email from I had a tender from Dubai Air Emirates the other day RFQ hit my inbox, and they were saying, and how do you use AI? And then everything in their marketing brief said, show us your AI, show us your AI. And I was like, this AI is really, that it's not a mystery. It's just, there's great platforms that do some of the stuff, and you can build a few GPTs to do some of the stuff. And
that's right.
Sure, you can get it to help you with your coding and some of, but like, other than that, everybody else has built the tool, and I'm just going to go find it. I'm going to build my own tools.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I'd like to maybe highlight as well. Number one, I know a lot of people are worried about data security and things like IP. So you putting in your own company information and stuff like that, and then that can fit into the model. I know with ChatGPT in particular, that if you use the API and not the web interface, that anything through the API is not fed into the model.
All right.
So if you use a third-party tool that uses the API, that's safe.
All
the
right.
third party's going to have your API, but it's not going to get fed into the general model. So if you're worried about that, at a minimum, and I don't know if there are any tools out there. I'm sure there are some tools out there that do this already, but you could even probably hire a developer that could write a simple web interface for you, where you could go and type in your query and it would just push it through the API and give you the answer back. So that way, at least you're not training their model with your data.
You're not making your confidential information and your proprietary information public for your competitors to use. And
potentially,
reference. Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other most fantastic use I've found for some of the AI tools we have at the minute, and you may do this or you may appreciate this as well. If you have something like video content, for example, like maybe your company, like you have a podcast, or you have video content where you have sales or marketing materials or any of that sort of thing, or training and all that. There are now tools on the market where you can put that video in, tell it what language you want it to be in. It will redo the video for you in that language, and it will redo the mouth shape so that it looks like you're actually saying it in that language. So the mouth shape will match the language.
What are you saying? That is amazing. Yeah. What is that tool?
HeyGen.
Is that HeyGen?
HeyGen does that.
Oh my gosh, that is what because that's why one of the reasons Mr. Beast became such a global phenomenon. He did what very few people did, is he would translate all of his videos, he would dub them. So he'd have like voiceover artists, and he would make his video in Spanish, in German, in French, in Portuguese, blah, blah, Chinese, Korean, blah, blah. So that he had global relevance. And now you're saying you can just upload, pay a small fee, and get the thing back. I am so on that. I am there. I've just gone global.
Yeah, and
that's amazing.
A friend of mine named Mike Russell, he's a YouTuber. He's been on YouTube for nearly 10 years, and he's an Adobe certified trainer. So he's done, everything I know about video and audio editing and engineering, I know because of watching his videos. But I've got to know him over the past couple of years, and he's doing that with one of his shows and some of his videos now. And what he did is he looked at his analytics, figured out where his videos were popular out, in non-English speaking regions. And I want to say that he was quite popular in like Saudi Arabia and stuff. So he went there first, but he does these, short 10-minute videos, whatever, puts them through, translates them into that language. He adds a little disclaimer to say, I've translated this using an AI tool. So if it's a little bit off, I apologize. Other than that, he then does the video and he puts it in the native language on those native YouTube sites, because that's the difference. And
you could run a whole business. You could run a whole business just offering that. That is just insane. I love it. Thank you.
And I think that's and I totally agree with you. I think as a little sideline for a media company, if you went to people and said, look, it's not that difficult, but it is time consuming and you kind of need to figure it out and whatever. And you just go, look, I'll handle it for you and I'll do all your videos into whatever languages you want.
Yeah.
And yeah, you could probably pick up, a few £1,000s a month just doing that for people.
Just doing that. Because, I mean, there are a lot of people who could do it themselves, but they just don't have the time or the inclination and don't have the money. And that's your audience right there. So
well, there's a little business for it. We have a business. Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it on there. So what's your favorite AI tool? The one you use the most?
I use ChatGPT all the time.
Okay, then let's say your second favorite tool, because everyone uses ChatGPT. Let's give us, so besides HeyGen, which is like a something absolute.
I don't use HeyGen a lot. I know that it does it. I use, nobody will have heard about this unless you do like podcasts and stuff, but I use a tool called Podium.
Okay.
And what Podium does is Podium does transcription. So I can upload an audio file. So I'll record a podcast. I do a video recording like we're doing now.
Yeah.
And then I take the audio file. I do just a basic rough edit on it to, get it in the basic shape, top and tail it, all that. And then I just spit that out into an MP3 and upload it really quickly in the background while I'm doing my color grading and all the other stuff. By the time I'm done, it's created an entire transcript. It can pick out all the different, voices and people that were talking and all that sort of stuff. It does a very, very good job at that. And so then I can just copy and paste the transcript in, do a little minor editing to that, and then I have the full transcript for the episode. But it suggests titles, it gives chapter breakdowns, it gives chapter highlights, it gives, hashtags, and then there's a tool where you can go and create LinkedIn posts, blog posts, YouTube descriptions, all that sort of stuff. And you have the ability to then, sort of tweak it as well. So none of it's ever right the first time, but I kind of have a few, tips and things like little secret prompt things that I ask it to do to get better results. And it usually takes me 2 or 3 times. Like the first one is to remove all the emoticons because they do my head in. And, you can always tell an AI post because I use those. But I use that for every single episode for all of the shows that I produce. And I produce at the minute through my media company, I'm producing about 15 shows.
Oh, wow.
And I use it for that all the time. The other tool that I use quite a lot is Riverside. And I use Riverside. It's similar to Zoom in that it's a video recording platform, except it's higher quality. So the audio is better and the video is better. But they also have some AI tools built in. So they do title suggestions. They do a bit of a transcript. But what they have that's really cool is they have and there's loads of tools on the market that do this, but I like Riverside because I use it to record anyway. But it will create clips for you. So you can just say, generate 5 clips, and it will search through the text and it will find sections that it thinks are interesting that would make a good clip, and then it creates those clips for you so you can go in and edit that, see if you like it, kind of do whatever you want with it, and then it makes it really easy just to spit out a social clip that you can then go straight to social media. And for me, because of the podcasting and all the video and audio and all the stuff that I do, those 2 tools probably save me. I mean, it saves me a day, probably.
Well, exactly. A day, or at least the cost of hiring a freelancer to do that, or you doing all of that yourself. I think that's amazing. I think that is the power of AI. But what worries me about AI is that, we created electricity to make our lives easier, but it made our lives faster. We created cars to make our lives easier, and it made our lives faster, but then everything just became faster and more and faster and more and faster and more. And we created the cell phone. We think we're the master and we become the slave. We think we're the master and we become the slave. And I'm just waiting for AI. At the moment, we are the master, But I really, and just see the trend, like everything has just enslaved us faster, more, faster, create more, work harder.
Yeah.
It's just, it hasn't made our lives easier. It just means that you can do more work faster, which means you're doing more work than before. And so that is what we're doing. We're just creating more. And like there is this barrage of junk, content going out into the world.
Yeah.
Because any fool and their dog can create stuff now. I mean, it took me an embarrassingly long amount of time when I'm sitting on YouTube Shorts, just relaxing at the end of the day, realizing I'm watching AI generated crap. Someone just put a prompt in, and this is, when it starts with this guy did this thing and then he did, oh my gosh, I'm done. So like half the YouTube Shorts aren't even real. And it's just like, I want a filter. Can I get a filter that just filters out auto-generated YouTube crap that content creators are just churning out?
Yeah, YouTube actually is doing a lot of work to battle that. And if you use AI, now when you put videos up, you have to mark if you've used AI to create the video, or you're supposed to. But they are doing a massive amount of battling that. So YouTube's trying to fight it as much as possible. I agree with you on one hand. On the other, like the faceless YouTube videos where they, it's like a little training thing, like how do I add this thing, or how do I do a VLOOKUP in Excel? And all you get are just results. It's obviously an AI voice. Those do my head in.
Yeah.
But
most YouTube videos do my head in. It's first 10 minutes of the person rambling absolute crap before they even just get to the meat and bones of it, Yeah,
that's true. But I was going to say a big but though, is I personally really enjoy some of the weird, completely bizarre videos that AI creates, particularly around songs. So there's a few people who do things who go back to like old songs, like maybe it's Led Zeppelin, or it might be Pink Floyd, or it could be Tool. There's a guy who does it for Tool. But he basically takes the music and the lyrics and puts that in, and then asks AI to create a video based on what's happening around the lyrics. And then he patches all those together into one video that goes with the music. And it is the most bizarre, disturbing, dystopian stuff you've ever seen. And it is completely amazing.
That sounds amazing.
And it's, I'll send you a link to one of them afterwards, so you can see what I mean. But I really enjoy it because it is absolutely 100% not human, and you can tell it's not human, but that's what's really cool about it. Yeah. And so I think that ultimately we're arriving at a point where like we had no AI. And then we had this AI thing that showed up, and everybody used AI and pretended it was them. Right? And I think we're moving out of that now, where AI is now becoming the third person, right? And it's kind of developing its own, I don't want to say personality, but kind of. Yeah. Like you can look at art and you know if it's AI art, right? Like so that's like very rarely are people skilled enough to write a prompt that can look like it's done by a human. There's just a feel to it, which is cool, and that's fine. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think what that's becoming is its own genre, maybe, and it's going to have its own personality and its own thing. And that's okay. It can coexist along with everything else. So, if you want a particular style, you can get a human to do it. If you want that, but the AI style might fit what you're trying to do.
We did that. We created one of our clients, Aphoria. They do Enneagram tests and assessments and consulting, and maturity, and they're amazing. And AI had just come out, and we did all their images in Midjourney, and they are all sort of dream state. Sort of like dream walking. You can just see they're all AI, but they are really quite spectacular. It took 20 times longer than if we'd used stock video, or even, Photoshopped the images extensively, or even gone and shot them, because it took that long. The prompting it takes very long to get the damn thing to do what you want it to do.
It does. Yeah.
But still, we specifically went for this very, like that dream state, kind of like, it's AI images, and we wanted people to know it's AI images.
Exactly.
That was quite nice. I'll put the link.
And it has its own thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention one other thing specifically, and I don't work for these guys, but I did have the founder on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and it goes back to the IP issue that I know a lot of people are very worried about, particularly creators and that sort of thing. But there's a company called Exactly.ai. And again, I don't get anything from them, just mentioning it because I think it's cool. But what they do is they've built a tool where artists can upload all of their own art, and it trains the AI on their particular style. And then they can use the AI to create more art in their style.
Oh.
But it doesn't train the general model, and it doesn't go to anyone else. So it's a private AI that basically you can use to train it on your own information only.
Wow.
And then if you want to give other people access to it, you can license people to use it if you want to, or you can give it to them for free. But it enables the artists to create more content and to give them ideas. So maybe they might want to play around with an idea so they could have the AI do it and kind of see what it comes out with. And maybe then that's something that they then want to go and create for real, or whatever. Or if they want to do it and they want to sell, they want people to be able to buy prints, for example, or create, whatever, they could just say, well, if you want to use it, you could use like Ansel Adams, for example.
Yeah.
Ansel Adams' family could upload all of his back history of images and then say, if people want an official Ansel Adams style photo, then they can come to the site and they can sign up and they can register and they can create the images that they want, for example.
That's amazing.
I don't know. I don't think Ansel Adams is doing that. It's just the first thing that came off the top of my head.
It's quite mind-bending. It really is quite... You have to decide quite early on, are you going to be part of that crew that almost hands over your creative to an AI? I mean, like if you think about the old artists, they taught their apprentices, and it was the apprentices who did the paintings.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like, this is the apprentice doing the painting, and I'll only sign it off if I approve it. But why can't I let AI be my apprentice and do my paintings for me?
Exactly.
I love it. I think that's so clever. So would you get the chip? Would you embed it? The AI augmentation chip?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm pretty crazy with stuff like that. So yeah, probably would.
Yeah.
If I had the money, I reckon I probably would. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be very hard to resist it. I mean, if I listen to Elon Musk, he's talking about physical augmentation. So you're going to have superhuman strength as well as computational powers. But my problem is mind control is in the hands of somebody else and can be hacked. So, all right. So what would you say? So your expertise really is along media and AI and helping startups to be successful. So if we go back to like business success, what have you found like is one of the big reasons startups fail in your experience?
Oh, I would say across the board, almost every startup that I've ever worked for that wasn't successful, let's say 90%. There's a few that weren't, but 90% of the startups that I've either worked for or done myself, ended up not being successful because they basically didn't get enough clients quickly enough.
Oh, right.
I think you've got to go super early. You've got to find customers even before you have a product. And you have to get those customers on board even before you have an MVP.
Wow.
You've got to be out there. You've got to be talking to people. You've got to line up that revenue. Most of the successful startups that I know took very little funding in the beginning and they actually lived off of their own revenue in the beginning. And I think if you can do that, it teaches you to be frugal, and it teaches you to be hungry.
Yeah.
And it forces you to constantly be pushing for the next customer, the next customer, the next customer. I think a lot of startups almost have too much money and they get lazy. So they think, oh, well, I've got $10 million, dollars from an investor. I can go and I can just sit around and navel gaze and build my software. And, I'll build an MVP and then I'll take it to the market. And it's like, if that's what you're doing, you're already dead.
Wow.
You have to be with the customers ahead of time, and you have to be out there, and you have to say, well, I've got this thing. Even if you don't have it, you go out and you talk to them. Hey, I've got this thing. It does this. Would you buy it? How painful is this problem that you have? Would you buy it?
Yeah.
And you've got to constantly be pushing on that from the beginning.
You're so spot on. I think what also happens if you're not really involved in like a client trial set, a bunch of people who've agreed to be your beta trial clients, you lose sight of the problem that you're solving, and you think you know what the problem is. But unless you come from that space, like you're a farmer and you live this problem and now you're building this solution, most of the time somebody has an idea and wants to just fob it off on an industry. And like they're not actually. So I think that what you're saying, it kills two birds with one stone. You are making sure that you have a product market fit, that you really are solving a real problem, and that you very closely understand the problem. And also these people who are trialing it for you and you're building it for them, and maybe it's free in the beginning. Once it's ingrained in their business and it's really doing what you said it would do, they'll pay when it comes time.
But they have to be willing to pay for it even before you have it.
Yes,
do you know what I mean?
True. That's true.
You've got to know that
if you ask someone, would you buy this thing? Most people, out of kindness, say sure. And then when you come with the bill, they're like, oh no, not this month. So that's really hard. If you can have like, okay, I will pay. This is so amazing. I will pay. I mean, that's really that's the proof. You're 100% right.
But that's where it's important to have those discussions quite early, because you can get past the I'll pay by, okay, can I get a PO? Right? Like you have to make that step, right? You have to have those discussions, and you have to say, well, how much budget do you have for this? Yeah. And you have to just put a finger in the air and say, I don't know, you come up with a price and you go, well, this particular thing, it's $5,000 a year, or it's $12,000 a year. So can we do a pilot? When do we? Yeah. And like push them for the detail. And if they say, well, show it to me, and you go, well, we're still developing it at the minute, or, like you can work with them, but you say, look, I need you to pay something. Yeah. Right. And it's that, but it's more the attitude of it, right? It's that you have to get that business lined up. Yeah. And you have to have that business ready to go. You can start pre-selling something 6 months before you actually have the final product, because it's going to take 6 months to get a PO anyway. Yeah. So, but you need to have that attitude. And I think
it's spot on, because if somebody's going to say, here's the PO, then they really believe that you can build it and that this is a relevant product. And
exactly.
And then you've got something. You've really got something.
Yeah. And it sharpens your attention, because now you can't just drift, right? You have to deliver something. So even if you say, look, sign the PO now, because, most companies, you are looking for a little bit of investment, but don't go out in a seed round and take, or a pre-seed round even, and take £4 or £5 million, because that you've got too much money, because then you're not hungry. And you go, oh, I've got tons of money. I can hire 10 developers, and I can hire all these people, and we'll get a nice office, and we'll buy these really nice monitors, and we'll get standing desks. And the next thing you know, you've frittered away, 40% of the money that you got on bollocks, and you don't have anything to show for it. Whereas if you stay hungry.
The problem as well is you just keep building and building it and building it, and it's never ready. You just keep building it and building it, and So I think like I spoke yesterday. I interviewed another lady on my podcast about, she helps small SMEs in South Africa to scale. She's got this whole program and this team, and we were talking about, how hard it is for business owners to wear every single hat. And I love what you said. You said something so profound. You said 0 to 0.5 is the founder, and then founder, you're at the limit of your abilities, and you have to bring on skilled people. You have to bring on someone who knows who's hungry for sales. If it's not you, you need to bring on somebody who's really hungry for sales and he's really knocking on that door. You need to know HR, or you need to get a good HR person. And in the beginning, I think it's best for the entrepreneur to do everything, because they learn everything and they have to know everything to be able to manage everything when they do move up and up and up and they get people on scale and stuff like that. But I think the main thing is, I
was just going to, while we're on that thread, when I went and went to get investment, so I had my own startup for a while around ad tech, and if you want to go to sleep, we can talk about that. But one of the questions that they asked me, when I was always talking to investors, is I would say something like, I just want the company to be successful.
Yeah.
And so the question was, well, how do you define success? What do you mean when you say successful? And my answer always was, and I firmly believe this, that if I start a company, my definition of success is that if I get it to the point that I go to a board meeting, and the board says, okay, Dave, you're no longer fit to run the company. We need to hire somebody who knows what they're doing. That is success, because I've gotten it. For me, that's one. I've gone from 0 to 1, because the personality type and the skill set to go from 1 to 10 is different than 0 to 1. And so for me, success is being able to hand over the reins to somebody else, because it's now beyond my ability to do it.
Yeah.
And for me, that's always kind of been the way. And I very much, and I don't know where I learned this. This isn't my own personal principle. People say this all the time, and I think Steve Jobs talked about it as well. But the idea when you build a team as well is you build people who are better than you and who know more than you. Well, because if you know more than they do, then you should still do it yourself. Oh, wow. Because otherwise it's not going to be done well. So you have to. But there's a huge self-confidence that comes with that. You can't be afraid of hiring those people. You can't have, you can't have a self-confidence issue. Because if you're not confident in your own abilities, then you start to worry about it, and then it doesn't work. You've got to be confident and say, no, I'm just going to hire somebody, and I'm going to hand this thing over to them because they know what they're doing, and they're just going to. And I want to say to them, look, you come and tell me what you need. Here's your budget. Off you go. And let them do it, and then let them teach you how you should be doing it. And that's really difficult for a lot of people.
It's difficult. I've seen entrepreneurs deliberately hire sheep who follow everything that they say because they don't want people to ask questions. So they hire a bunch of sheep, and then they try and step away from the business. And then they're angry at the sheep because the sheep aren't leaders.
Exactly.
And the sheep are dropping the ball because they've trained them. And then they say, you see, the business can't succeed without me. Look,
without me. Yeah.
Look, I need to be there. And then they come back and save the business because secretly they never wanted to leave anyway. And they definitely didn't want it to succeed without them. And they would rather see the business go down.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main thing is as fast as you can, hire better people than you, people who've proven that they can do it, and then happily sit back and just make sure that they're happy and empowered and doing the right thing. And then the business cannot fail.
And that's a manager's role, right? A manager's job at every level.
Yeah.
So at every level, the manager should be hiring better than them at every level. So even if you've got a team manager that's, five levels down from the CEO, that manager of that team should be hiring people that are better than them.
Well,
It should always work that way. And
I agree with you. I think that is
again,
so
it's tough to find those people who can do that, but that's part of, again, when you hire though, you hire for fit and you train for skill.
It's so true because
Mostly.
I read a Harvard Business Review article 15 years ago where they analyzed the top 100 companies in America that were in the top 100 for the longest period of time.
Right.
And they realized that, and then they interviewed all the CEOs and the team leaders, and they came back to the companies that were had the longest longevity in the top 100 over the longest period of time. They had their CEOs displayed one trait, and that is humility. The CEOs kept saying, it's not me, it's not me, it's my team, it's my team.
Yep.
And they managed to boil and distill this down to not what you just said, not a doing skill, an execution skill, or a strategic skill, or a thinking skill, but actually an EQ skill.
Yep.
Personality. And it's not personality, it's EQ, it's maturity. Coming back and being able to say, okay, I'm at my limits, guys. I need somebody better than me, and actually paying the money and getting them on board.
Yeah, that's right.
I love what you just said.
So I think those couple of things, you do what you can, but you're right, but the founder has to be aware enough and confident enough to be able to do those hires in the beginning. I think in the beginning you do need some skill. I'm not saying skill's not important.
No. Completely.
All things being equal, you have to hire the person that's best. I mean, I've hired hundreds of consultants over the years, and my criteria became, I could sit down and talk to someone for 10 minutes, and if it wasn't a fit, I would just say, look, I'm really sorry, but you're not a fit for the team. They could be the most skilled person in the world, but if they were going to be disruptive to the team, then it didn't matter. I'd rather take somebody who had not as good a skill, but that would fit in and gel with everybody else, because we can improve their skill. And
I've made that mistake with staff and with clients before, but with staff, oh no, but they're so good at this, they're so good at this. Meanwhile, they're an absolute a-hole and upsets everybody.
Exactly.
And, you think you can't live or work without this person, but actually, no. So I think the EQ is important. I can always teach the skill, but I don't want to be teaching the skill. I want both.
Yeah.
So if you're an a-hole, you need to be aware of it.
Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, look, sometimes, you need that skilled person, and sometimes you need somebody who maybe doesn't gel with the team. It's so difficult, but
it's a fine balance.
If you're in a B2B industry where you have a very, very, very specific knowledge of something, it could be traffic signal engineers, right? And you need, you sell a very specific product.
And lives are on the line. Lives are on the line, air traffic control and...
Yeah, and so you need a particular type of person for that. So, but again, that's fit. They need to fit with those people, not... Anyway,
I agree with you.
Anyway.
It's been amazing talking to you. I just feel like we could speak for hours. But I'm conscious of time, and I just want to thank you. And listeners, if you guys want to reach out to David, you'll find his contact details below. David, thank you so much. It's been amazing talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. No worries.